Hello, listeners, and welcome to a new series of Headstrong. This is a podcast hosted by me, Louis Strong. I am an actor and producer. I started Headstrong because I wanted to create a platform where I could talk to people in the public eye about their lives and their careers. But ultimately, I wanted to talk to them about their vulnerabilities, to help you, the listener, understand what it means to be headstrong, or at least what I believe it to mean. And to me, it means to believe in yourself, to talk about your vulnerabilities, and reinforce your self-worth. As I said, this is a brand new series of Headstrong. We've had 3 series to date, and whilst they have all been incredible in their own right, the guests on this series are even bigger and even better, but still with some amazing stories. On today's episode of Headstrong is the wonderful actor Jane Seymour. No, not Henry VIII's wife, no. This is the actor Jane Seymour, known for Dr. Quinn, Live and Let Die, the Kominsky Method, Wedding Crashers, and coming up a number of projects that Jane is working on. We talked about her career, how she started in the industry, a few challenging issues, as well as why 2020 was possibly the most demanding and challenging working year of her life. I hope you enjoy this episode. Jane, thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk to me today on Headstrong. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm seriously excited to talk to you. Obviously, we met out on the set of Glow in Darkness, which is a Spanish production, but there were some questions left unsaid considering we only spent a week together. So I'm going to take this opportunity to hopefully ask you a few more questions, if that's all right.
Okay.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Glow in Darkness is a period drama about Richard the Lionheart, Francis of Assisi in that historical period. And we had great fun that week. Well, I certainly did. And you were out there a little longer than I was. There's some fantastic costumes, locations on this production. And of course, it's a European production as well. How have you found the show?
It's, I would say, hugely ambitious. It's huge, when I first started, I think it was maybe almost a year ago, it was pre-COVID, and then COVID came into effect. So, a lot of locations had to be changed, and filming had to be cancelled and rearranged. So, it's been pretty amazing that they were able to keep shooting during this whole pandemic. And when I started it, I think it was 15 hours long. Now I'm told it's 45 hours long. So all I can tell you is I'm playing a part in it, and I'm not in the whole thing.
But 45 episodes, I didn't even know that. That's seriously ambitious, but exciting.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you could see the lighting cameraman is very famous. Jose Luis Alcane, I think is his name.
Yes.
He's amazing. And yes, and you were great. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm learning from the best.
No, hardly.
Absolutely. Well, no, we had some good fun out there. And so for the listener, who are you playing, Jane?
I'm playing Eleanor of Aquitaine, who managed to live to the ripe old age of 80 at a time when most people were dead by 40. Yeah. So she really outlived most people. She managed to be Queen of England and Queen of France. She also, in her own right, owned more of France than the King of France. She owned what they called Aquitaine, which was a huge, huge part of France. And I think she had 10 children, one of whom was Richard the Lionheart, who became a king, and then King John Lackland, as they called him. And I think she had a number of other children who became either princesses or queens or something. But the 2 sons are the ones who are most famous.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you wrapped now completely, or are you heading out again?
No. I still have another 3 weeks to do in January and February. I've got another 11 days work, actually.
Oh, great. That's really exciting. Because I actually don't even know anything about any release information. Although you did do a press day out there, didn't you?
Yes, none of us are any the wiser.
And how does it differ from your vast array of credits, a European production to that of an American or English production? Because I have experienced them, but not in the number that you have.
Well, this is very different because it's a Spanish production. And they have all different kinds of rules and ways of, doing things. And I think what makes it amazing is the quality of the like the lighting and the crews are amazing, and the a lot of the sets are extraordinary, and of course they are real. And in America, most things were only built like 250 years ago, and everything there was built actually in 10 or 1100. Yeah. So that would be the major difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got to say, we've been very lucky that we were able to be working during such an uncertain time. But you yourself, more so than probably anyone to be walking the planet, have found yourself exceptionally busy this year. And that is, that's fair enough. Yeah, I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. Everyone else I know is hiding in place and afraid to go out the back door or the front door or even in the garden. And I've been to Australia, where I starred in a movie called Ruby's Choice. I was in Sydney. I did my 2 weeks quarantine first, which was pretty tough and pretty wild. It's, you really are kind of a prisoner in your hotel room. But look at Australia and New Zealand, how brilliantly they've done. So, I was very happy to do it. It was a wonderful role. I played a woman who has Alzheimer's, and about, how she impacts her entire family, something that you'd think would be the saddest thing on the planet. She ends up just, really changing the lives in a very positive way of every member of her family, everyone she comes into contact with. So that was kind of cool to do. It's a small feature. And then I did Glow in Darkness. Again, everyone said, you can't go on an airplane, you'll get COVID. And I went, no. I went to the airport. There was no one there. I got on the airplane. There was no one there. I spoke to the people on the airplane, and they said that most of these airplanes now are carrying cargo because so few people are traveling. And indeed, I had special dispensation to come to Madrid, to Spain, because they're not letting Americans in. I think they let Denise in, Denise Richards, but I counted as a Brit, so that was good.
That was lucky. I mean, just going back to that 2 weeks in Sydney, because I don't know if anyone who's listening doesn't know about it. They literally take you from the airport, chaperone you to a hotel, and you're locked in for 2 weeks, aren't you? How was that experience? How tough was that mentally?
It was pretty tough. It was pretty tough because no one really actually tells you what it's like. I mean, you are marched off the airplane almost one at a time, and then you're marched here, there, and everywhere where temperatures are taken and forms are filled in, and it's the army and it's the police, and everyone's got guns, and nurses in hazmat suits, and then you sort of grab all your own luggage, which for me is quite tough because I'm not very strong. And of course, I had enough clothes there for not only my costumes, which I brought with me, but also enough for 5 weeks. And then they put you in a bus, and then they won't tell you where you're going. They don't tell you what hotel. You can't tell anyone anything. Then they process you literally like a prisoner almost, put you in a room, no key, of course. You're not allowed to leave for 2 weeks. And then they test you, all the time.
Wow. And we know from personal experience that they're not the most comfortable of tests.
Oh my goodness me! I thought someone had rearranged my brains and taken the membranes out between my nasal passage and my brain. It was frightening. Some people are rougher than others. We had one particularly very, very. We had a nurse Ratched in there one day.
Yeah.
Yes, I wasn't the only one with a 3-hour headache. So.
No, I think we were all in a similar position. But I mean, for those 2 weeks in particular, it's worth noting that COVID's probably thrown the communication side of things into perspective. Now that we're not allowed to spend as much time with people face to face.
Right.
How important have you found that? Not being able to see your kids, and having to spend more time probably on FaceTime and the likes of that.
Actually, I found it in some ways quite wonderful, because I've been having very long, meaningful conversations with people that I would never have had time to have. I speak to my family in England pretty much every day. My grandchildren have found some app thing where they contact me at a moment's notice, and we play games together and talk and draw and and do silly things. So I've actually connected with them. I've got more of their attention because they love being able to do that on Zoom. And because I live out by the ocean and people can come outside, one of my family actually lives here, one of my sons, and the other one's been working for me, so he's been in and out. So my bubble of family I have seen. But in the beginning, it was hard, not to be able to run up to the grandchildren and give them big hugs,
I know. And also, we've not been massive fans of the masks, but I suppose we've got to accessorize them as best we can.
I came up with my own mask accessories, which I sold for COVID charities, and they sold out immediately. I had one called Ride the Wave, with actually this image on it, which is, I'm also a painter and designer, and I do sculptures, but this is like two open hearts, if you can see it.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Two open hearts, which is my symbol, in a wave design, like a yin yang. And the idea is that in life, there's lots of challenges, and wherever and however you're born, you don't choose that, but it's almost like you're in a body of water going in a direction. Then there's the woohoo moment when you make the team, get the part, win the prize, have first kiss, fall in love, whatever it is. And then, oh, no, it's not going to stay there. And then, it can crash, hurt. But if you keep going, you meet new opportunities, new people, new experiences, and you create a new wave. So I thought was very pertinent to what we're all doing now with the pandemic. We're not going back to something. We have a new normal, and we now know more than ever that we can't take a moment of our lives for granted.
Absolutely. And well, as we know, as we briefly touched on there, that your life has been so incredibly busy. What is it that wants you to stay busy? What is it inside you, your motivation to be doing your designing, your painting, your acting, your charity work? What is that inspiration?
Well, okay. In terms of acting this year, great roles. And then the opportunity to work with Robert De Niro and Chris Walken and Cheech Marin in War with Grandpa, the chance to work with Kat Denning and Malin Ackerman and do that movie. I just finished doing the Kominsky Method with Michael Douglas and Lisa Edelstein, amazing people. And then I'm going to go and do another show called Younger, which I'm going to shoot in New York. But the thing is, I really enjoy acting, as crazy as it may sound. I know you do.
Yeah, I love it.
When it's good, it's very, very good. And when it has its moments, it has its moments. But I do enjoy creating different characters. It's what I love. I like big creating, okay? Let's get it down. I like creating. And I also paint. That's a passion of mine. That's what I did actually in quarantine in Australia. I painted and got this sort of blue tack stuff and stuck all my little paintings on the bare walls. And when it comes to philanthropy, I've done that my whole life. I think the more you give and the more you help others, the more you help yourself. The greater joy. I don't think there's any greater joy than knowing that somehow you manifested some kind of change for somebody that needed help, whether it's just literally listening to someone talk about what they're dealing with, or whether it's raising money for organizations or feeding people, or, rescuing people who've been abused. I mean, I can think that there's so many extraordinary things that need to be done right now, including saving our planet. and then dealing with this pandemic. So I just, I'm not political. I like to be issue driven.
Absolutely. And also you mentioned there the War with Grandpa, which was the lead role of Robert De Niro, and also the rest of the cast was just completely stellar. I mean, you've had an incredible career up to this point, but do you still pinch yourself when you're doing films like that and go, wow, I'm still succeeding at the highest of levels, doing these absolutely awesome films with some of the best people in the world at the best of their jobs?
I pinch myself every day that I'm alive and healthy and happy and, have so many amazing things. But yes, it's very exciting to work with some of these greats, even in their later years and my later years, to have a career and to work as consistently as I am right now at my age is unusual. I mean, there are a few of us who are lucky enough to do that. And I think I've been, particularly fortunate recently. There's some great roles I have coming up. I've been offered so many amazing things. I don't know why. They used to say that an actress's career was sort of on the wane, and from the time you're 40. But when I was 40, I got Dr. Quinn. So I think I just break the rules. There was also a rule way back when where they said you couldn't do movies, theater, television, and radio. You had to do one or the other. And I remember one week I was in New York opening in Amadeus with Ian McKellen and Tim Curry in the original cast of Amadeus. East of Eden came out, which was a great, great role for me, miniseries, and the movie with Christopher Reeve, Somewhere in Time. And that was all in 1 week. So I went, and then I thought, why not have a baby? Only a crazy person, hits a home run like that and then decides to get pregnant. But I did that too. So there you go. I'm a little crazy.
Ticking all the boxes at once. I mean, of course.
Yes. What other box can we tick off here?
Well, I'm sure there's still a few more to tick. I have no doubt.
Well, I for me, I'm constantly learning, and, joking aside, I tend to use a lot of, as self-depreciating humor that gets misinterpreted constantly. But I learn every day. I mean, that's what life's about. I think you're constantly learning, and I'm very open-minded, and I'm always game to try something new, and I feel that not trying would be the failure.
Absolutely. So do you feel very grounded in yourself then? Because of course, for somebody who's looking in on the creative industries, in particular film and TV work, they might see people who are in those productions, and particularly those that take part, as have some sort of status and power. But at the end of the day, everybody is just an individual getting on with their lives, and you are just living your life, but it's in just a different line of work. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's all my kids have ever known. So people, sometimes say, "What's it like to have your mother as your mother?" And I think that's the only mother I know. That's this is normal for me. So, working like this and having the life that I have, this has been, changing over the years, but this has been my normal. This is what I've known since I started working professionally when I was 13. And sort of, full-time pretty much from the time I was 17. So I think I have a sort of a work ethic that some people don't like, for themselves. They don't. Some people like to do a 9 to 5, and they work to play. My work is my play. Does that make any sense?
Definitely, because you enjoy your work so much that every day feels like you're not working.
Exactly. And the big secret is I'd probably pay for the privilege, but hey, I think I do pay for the privilege, actually, but sometimes. But, I also enjoy writing, producing, public speaking, dancing. Oh, I love to dance. I love teaching. I love I've never tried directing officially, but on many occasions I've been on movies where, someone's having a struggling with the scene or something, and they've asked me for some advice, and I've sort of tried to help, and in helping them, I've realized how much I enjoy doing that too. So, one day I think I would love to direct.
What would it be? A film, TV, period?
Probably anything anyone would let me do. I've been trying to direct my family and for years. No, I think when you've been in the business as long as I have, and you can actually look at it from the inside, you can look at it from the outside. And I've worked, as I said, as a producer as well, and sat behind the monitors and watched, what we were looking for, what we were trying to get with the director, and watching it from both sides, watching it in the editing room, watching it in marketing, and watching it, in working on the script, and sort of looking at the whole big picture. And I really like being part of the big picture, not just coming in and doing 2 days or, a few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. If I can just rewind and maybe we can take a chance to have a look at the start of your career briefly.
Okay.
You'd already had an immense start before you'd attained the role in Live and Let Die. And how do you reminisce on this opportunity? Because that is such an important role to take on when James Bond and 007, and particularly alongside Roger Moore, it's going to be so iconic. Did you, at the time, because you were still, extremely young, were you anxious taking on that role and knowing what was expected of you?
I had no idea what was expected of me. I'd seen Goldfinger, I think, or something that Sean Connery had done, and I'd watched Roger Moore and The Saint, and I was much younger than him, and I was 20 years old. I was very green. Some people are, very grown up at 13. I was probably 13 at 20. I was very, very timid, and when I look at myself, I mean, I'm talking in a very high voice. Oh my gosh, and I just oh God, I cringe. And I was straight out of, drama school, pretty much close to. But it was such a big machine, it was such a big thing. And the travel involved. I went to New Orleans. I'd never been to America. I went to Jamaica. I'd never been there. I stayed in hotels. I never stayed in hotels. We didn't afford hotels, I was in restaurants all the time. I had all my costumes made in triplicate. They were making my shoes and my underwear. I mean, really? This was unbelievable. And I remember going on set the first day, and the first thing that the producer said to me when he saw me was, he said, "What the hell do you look like?" And I went, presumably really? What you wanted me to look like. And he said, "You look terrible. You looked better last night by the pool. Where's your suitcase? Where's your clothes?" And they literally ransacked my little suitcase and remade all my costumes and things. And from that day on, I was 20 years old. Every movie I've ever been on, I bring costumes, wardrobe, makeup, and hair pieces or wigs with me, just in case.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea. That's fascinating.
Yes. Well, of course, on Glow and Darkness, I brought wigs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow. So at that time, that particular role as well, I think it would be fair to say that I don't think it would be it'd be possible to probably create such a role in the modern era, with such a sexualized, well, particularly in that era, I would say the 70s and the 80s, some of the roles that were written, I think are a bit far, a bit, I don't want to say backwards, but wouldn't suit in the modern day, we'll put it that way. And particularly with the Me Too movement and everything like that. How important do you find it now to use your platform to spread messages, particularly upon reflection of, your own personal experiences as well with the producer in 1972?
Right. Well, I would never have spoken about it except, when it was first discussed, the whole kind of Me Too thing. And obviously people have had far far worse experiences than me. I just felt that, and I've discovered it's not just in our industry. You know, I've spoken to so many lawyers and businesswomen and everything, and of course men. I mean, it happens to men. I'm sure you know. It's really about power, and I just felt that I had made a choice. It was a choice I'm very glad I made. And I only really sort of told the story because the people involved were no longer with us. So, and the person who you know I was talking about, you know, was famous for this kind of behavior. So it wasn't one-off. And I really was kind of pointing out that I was not protected by the people that were supposed to protect me. In my case, my agent and, you know, fellow producers. And they were men. And they, you know, when I lied and said, oh, I hadn't gone, they all went, oh, thank goodness you didn't, because, you know, it would not necessarily have worked out to your advantage, because you would have had to make choices, but so good you never went. So it's the only reason I ever said, you know, told my story. But I think, you know, talking about, you know, back in the day of Bond, I mean, the world changes all the time. The way people, you know, what's politically correct now compared to what was politically correct then is just, it's completely different, you know.
Completely.
And you know, and women haven't even had the vote for that long. Let's face it. You know, I mean, it's crazy, all the things that your generation take for granted. I mean, I can tell you that when I went to school and we did a subject, we had to run to the public library to get the only 3 books they had, and the rest of the class never got the book. We couldn't go online.
That's madness, isn't it?
Right? I mean, honestly, to compare then to now, you can't.
It's impossible to compare them. It's just upon reflection.
And pointless, really. I mean, and I think we always go really far in one direction, and then eventually things sort of even out.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just important that, and I'm really pleased that you did feel that you were able to take the opportunity to then, you know, use your empowerment to tell that story, to hopefully make that a step in the right direction and continue to make that change and for the positive as well.
Yes, I mean, I suppose the only thing I was saying was you have a choice.
Definitely.
And if you don't have a choice, that's needs to be reported.
Yes, well, I think we can both agree. There's no doubt that the 007 and James Bond franchise is, you know, globally well known. But there has been debate in pop culture for some time and conversation regarding a black Bond or a female Bond. Where do you stand on this with the you know, the history of the books and indeed the films?
I stand on that. I believe Barbara Broccoli has always picked the right combination for the right time. You know, I always tell people the Bond of today is the Bond of today. I mean, back in the day when I did it, they were actual books that Ian Fleming had actually written.
Yeah, quite.
To some degree. And then I remember Roger Moore saying to me, oh, you know, nowadays what we do is we all decide where we want to go on holiday, and that's where we decide to set the next Bond film. I went, oh, really? That's how you do it? I went, yep, that's how we do it. I went, okay, well, that makes sense. They changed everything around, you know. I mean, my character, I think, was supposed to be a woman of color. And as my father pointed out, she was supposed to be dragged behind a boat on a coral reef, which my father, being a doctor, told me would be far too dangerous. And I had to make sure they didn't do that to me. But no, I mean, joking aside, when I joke, I always get into trouble and get misquoted. But I just, I think, you know, Bond can be whatever Barbara thinks Bond should be. And she usually, you know, is definitely in tune with the generation that she's creating a Bond for.
Definitely. I think that's very, very truthful and correct opinion, to be fair. Now we've looked at that Bond era, but you throughout your career as well, you've expressed romance on screen and stage, and you've had a lot of on-screen partners, who would you say that you've felt as your on-screen partner you've had the most the best chemistry with and the most enjoyment out of?
Well, two people. I would say the late Christopher Reeve. We did this beautiful movie, Somewhere in Time. We were both single at the time. We fell madly in love, and I think you can see it on screen. And Joe Lando and I, we did the pilot, and quite famously, we were single. We fell madly in love, and everything was wonderful until we broke up just before they picked up the series, and so we spent 6 or 7 years working together, not as a couple, but playing a couple. So, but we've gone on to become the closest friends to one another, and our families have all grown up together. And his wife and my partner or husband, we've all been very close, and all our kids. So he's like family. So I would say those two men.
That's great. And what about the best on-screen kiss?
I think they tie evenly, and yes, on and off screen, I'd say. We got to practice.
What do you think has been your most challenging role to date as well? Because you've played some incredible roles and been acknowledged for winning multiple awards as well throughout your life, and in fact, you've cemented your place in Hollywood quite literally on the wall, the Hollywood Boulevard. So, what would you say is your most challenging role, but probably the one you thrived in most?
You see, that's really hard too, because it's almost like asking which one of my children I love the most,
I know. It is a horrible question.
I would say 9 months of working all over Europe, depicting World War II in the 32-hour miniseries, War and Remembrance, playing Natalie Jastrow. I think that was pretty huge. I was working with Sir John Gielgud, which was amazing. And we were filming in Auschwitz and Birkenau, and we were reenacting World War II so graphically and so realistically that it was minus 20 degrees. I was trudging in the snow, wearing the striped pajama thing. I had heads shaved, and I starved myself so I'd be emaciated enough for the character. And of course, my parents had survived World War II, and we'd lost a number of relatives in the camp. So it was more than acting for me. It was, a huge experience. I wouldn't just say cathartic's not really the word for it. It was an immersion in something I had read about, heard about, and that my parents had experienced to some degree. So it was much more than acting.
Yeah, as you say, it sounds like it was an immense experience, a life experience. I've never even been to some of those places, and obviously I feel like everyone should, deserves and needs to go to these places to actually understand a little bit more about the history. But it's even more relevant for you, considering your history and your family and your parents.
Yes, actually, the most interesting thing was that when we finally did the publicity on it, I couldn't believe it. There were young people who believed that it was all a lie and it never happened. There are people who actually believe the Holocaust never happened. And when I had experienced what I did acting in it, and alongside me would be real survivors, with the tattoos and with the traumas and who'd survived and dropped everything to come back and make sure that the story was told so this would never happen again. That was unbelievable to me. And so, sometimes you make a story and you're just really proud to have been part of it because you feel it's important. And it's through drama and through television, through film, that you can get through to people. When you give them facts and numbers and, this happened, that happened in this place and those dates, it's never as meaningful as when you actually follow characters that you can identify with on this journey, and you find yourself being them, imagining you're them and going through these experiences. So I think, things like that, when I get to do that kind of material, that's always the most exciting to me. Doing anything that's real is very exciting to me.
Well, as you say, you fully immerse yourself in any role you take on. I mean, there you go. You knew all the history of Eleanor of Aquitaine, and you know, probably should have known it, but I don't.
You had to learn a song.
I did have to learn a song, and we'll wait to see that.
Yes, but I learned a bit about Eleanor of Aquitaine. I started reading all these books on her, and you know, I only get to play her in her later years. I play her in her 70s and until she dies at 80. So with a flashback sequence, but you know, it is so wonderful when you play these characters because you actually get to sort of walk in history to some degree. I played Marie Antoinette in the French Revolution, and actually was in Versailles with my actual real children playing the royal children. And was, you know, there were real candles, and we were doing minuets, and we were shooting it in 2 languages. I was in France speaking French as a French queen. I went, you know what, this is pretty darn cool.
That is incredible, and particularly to share it with your kids, that is so cool. And also, well, you're fluent in French anyway, aren't you?
Pretty only because of that film, because my agent omitted to mention to me that I was playing it in 2 languages. I think he must have heard me say order in a French restaurant once or something. I don't know why he thought I could speak French, but mercifully I could. At the end of the day, I did speak French, and I do speak French now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we talked about fully immersing yourself, and the idea that, you know, and particularly in the on-screen romances as well. And there's always often this depiction that they're this happily ever after kind of scenario. But I mean, as we know in life, as is life, that, you know, love is not always, you know, the easiest path. How have you navigated your life through love? What is it that you look for in a partner specifically? And I mean, I know that varies at different points in your life and career, but what are the core traits that you look for in a partner? You know, I think you put took the words out of my mouth. I mean, there are different times in your life where you look for different things. You know, I think, you know, it's sort of highly romantic love when you're very young and exciting and different, and you know, and you feel like a grown up and all of that. And then you know, back in my day, people didn't live together. They waited, and then they got married, and they did things in a completely differently. So for me to even mention to you what it was like in the days of the dinosaurs, you can't imagine. Even your parents are probably not as old. So, you know, back in the day, I think if you wanted to have a relationship, you got married. So you got married too young, which is what I did. And I really married, you know, 2 men then who became and still are my best friends. And they're kind of like brothers, and I'm like their sister, and we're all very, very close. But you see, I don't actually regret any of the relationships I've ever had in my life. I feel that I've learned a lot from all of them, and I've had the opportunity to love and be loved. And, you know, many people never have that at all. So, you know, I don't feel I have to box anything into a box. Yeah, I really like your kind of attitude towards it, that everything that you have experienced is a lesson for growth. And as you say, you're learning every single day. So every single day is a lesson to improve oneself and the relationships that you embark on. And speaking of which, this leads me on to your sisters, who are both chefs, I do believe. Well, they're not professional chefs. You must have misheard me. No, they love creating food. As do you. And they are brilliant at it. And to be perfectly honest, it's really fun because I will take them to a fancy restaurant that they've already researched. They will have already researched the entire menu and the deal within the entire family, because all the cousins cook as well brilliantly, is that they are going to learn something from tasting something at the restaurant, and then they're going to analyze what the ingredients were and then make it even better at home. So, and then once they've made it even better at home, they then write it out for me and send me the recipe, and then I try and do it here. But we're all foodies, and that is sort of the family passion. You all 3 of you are quite close, aren't you, in age particularly? Very, yeah. What was that like growing up?
My father was a doctor at the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. My mother was not a trained nurse. She was like a Red Cross volunteer. Yes. She actually ran a company from our little tiny house, supplying wine, spirits, and tobaccos to major embassies in London. No one knew that she was just a Dutch housewife in a little tiny semi-detached.
Well, I'm sure she did well to supplying to the embassies with said.
Hopefully, we never saw any money, but hopefully.
Are you still incredibly close with your sisters in terms of the support that you give each other?
Very, very much so. I'm very blessed. My sisters, I'm the oldest. Sally's the middle one. Annie's the youngest. There's a year and 4 months between each of us. Wow. I've actually made movies where they wanted me to be doubled, either as a once I played twins and they had to have someone else be the back of my head or whatever. So both my sisters have actually worked on movies with me, doubling for me. And sometimes even my daughter Katie, has been doubling for me as well. So, when I have to be 3 places at once, I have 2 sisters and a daughter that can help me out. We're very close. My sister Sally worked for the airlines most of her life. Yes. And she's a sun worshipper, so she's got much darker skin and dark hair, and she's sort of a wonderful, lively character, very outgoing and social. And Annie is brilliant and a wonderful mother. She's got 3 amazing kids, and 2 of them ended up being teachers and great teachers, and one of them's ended up being an obstetrician gynecologist, same as my father.
Yeah.
And we're all very close, we all support one another in everything we do.
When you were, as the oldest, as you were growing up, what was it that, was it your adoration of, I don't know, live performance or theatre that made you wanted to go into the creative industries? What was that kind of inspiration from a very young age that made you want to go into acting?
I loved it from day one. I mean, my mother said she had to put me in dance classes for 2 reasons. One was because at kindergarten, when we first went to school, I was told to go and stand on one side while everyone else got to stand on another side. And I thought, I'm special. And it was because I had flat feet and a speech impediment. So I had to come into school earlier and learn to walk on the outside of my feet, arch my feet. That turned into ballet lessons. That turned into point classes. That turned into dancing with the Kirov at Covent Garden. So, whenever anyone tells me I can't do something, it tends to be the thing I'm going to be best at. So that's what happened with the dance. And then the speech impediment was I couldn't pronounce the R, which of course in English, the way you and I speak it, the R is almost never mentioned, never used. And of course in America, where I mostly play Americans, that's all they do is roll their R's. So that I remember very, very young, the first little dance recital at school, just loving every minute of it. And my mother said I would dance in this tiny kitchen and, pots and pans would go flying. So we had a little narrow garden backing onto a railway line, and we put the washing line up. That's for people who don't have dryers, okay? We used to hang our laundry up with little wooden pegs. We had a little apron with pegs in it. Trust me, that's what we did. And we would turn that into a theatre. So those would be our curtains. And we wrote and performed our own plays and did ballets and musicals. And my father wrote a pantomime about Cinderella. And of course, we don't have any sound on it, but we still have that from when I was young.
Wow. Oh, my God.
Yeah, we performed. My sisters and I, we all performed all the time.
Well, as I know from our time together, I loved seeing all the photos and pictures that you love to take. So I'm so pleased that you've got documentation all the way back to your ballet lesson and performances with your parents.
Yes.
I've got to say, we can't do this podcast without talking about the incredible charity that you work so hard on, and that you founded that in 2010. And so that's now 10 years of incredibly important charitable work that you do, and you devote an enormous amount of time to that. What is it that gives you the drive for that in particular? Because you do spend a lot of time on the charitable organization, and I'm suspecting it's because you want to be able to give back.
Right. I sort of touched on it, but my mother survived World War II in an internment camp in Indonesia. She was Dutch and she was living in the Dutch East Indies. So by the time I was born, very much her mantra in life was that everyone in life would have challenges, and that however hard you think something is for you, if you can accept how hard that is, open your heart and reach out to help someone else, it won't be very hard to find someone far worse off than you. And that by helping someone else, you would help yourself and you would be able to heal and move forward and move on with your life. And, giving and helping other people gave to you. So that was just a way of living. So I call it open-hearted. And so I started this thing called the Open Heart Foundation, where we really were encouraging and helping and curating for people who want to give back, whether it's financially or in volunteer opportunities or in fundraising or, really creating that that way of being and way of living. And I've been doing that. We raised money until COVID. We would have a big event every year, and the money would then be dispersed to usually about 3 different charities. Now, since COVID, I think we've got like 20 different charities.
Wow.
We've been doing micro donations too, but each time it's for something very specific that they specifically need now. And each one of the organizations has more difficulty now because of COVID. We tended to stick recently to women and children's issues because we felt that was by far the best investment, because women invariably are taking care of everyone anyway, and they seem to know what to do. And a lot of women have been abused, who've had to run away with their children and need safe places to go. And especially, with the pandemic and with everything that's been going on. And so, and then my daughter, Katie, who's 38, came up with the concept of the Young Hearts app. So we are building an app that will, rather like a dating app, it will match organizations that need volunteers with special skills that want to volunteer to in either specific areas or online or have legal knowledge or teachers or mothers or whatever it is, coaches. I mean, so it aligns with the algorithms, and that's a big thing that very exciting thing we've been working on, and hopefully it'll be out soon. And my dream and her dream is that we have this connecting organizations and volunteers globally.
That's incredible. Do you know when is going to be launched? Because I know that you've taken quite a strong in assisting that.
Yes, well, we've gotten through to stage 2. We're building the algorithm, putting it together. We're now getting the right team to bring it up to market. Is that going to be in the UK or the US? We're starting out in the US, and hopefully, if it works well, it's an app. So all you have to do is input it with the right people in both sides. Yeah, exactly. But we have, we've heard from people all over the world saying they want to do this. I mean, I've got organizations already in Thailand and in England, and places that really want to do this. So once we get it up and going, I shall let you know. But my daughter's right. The younger generation want to make a difference. They get out in the streets. They are using their voices and their enthusiasm, and they are not being apathetic. They're getting out and trying to make a difference. And so this is really to support that and make it easier and quicker for them to find where, when, and what, rather than spending forever searching on the internet and not knowing how to go about it.
Well, that's really exciting. I mean, that's great to have something to look forward to. I hope in 2021, hopefully with COVID, fingers crossed anyway, with the vaccine coming, and looking forward to that for your charity. But professionally, what can we look forward to in 2021 from Jane?
Well, the Ruby's Choice will come out, More Glow in Darkness, of course. I'm actually doing wonderful series in Europe, but it hasn't been announced yet, so I can't really tell you. But I will be in Europe for 4 months next year, starring in my very own 8-part series.
Delighted to hear that.
Which will be shown all over the world. So I'm not really allowed to tell you what it is yet, but I'm very excited about it. It's been postponed, obviously, this year because of COVID. But yeah, and I don't know what else. I keep reading that they're going to make a Wedding Crashers 2 and a War with Grandpa 2. So who knows? That would be fun.
That would be fun. And now those are both films that I would happily get behind.
Yeah.
Jane, as I come to the end of the podcast, I asked the same 2 questions to all of my guests at the end. The first one being, what piece of advice would you give to somebody breaking into the creative industries?
You've got to love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, and you have to be able to handle rejection, and also you have to realize that you might have to do at least one other, if not several other jobs, just to be able to have the privilege of being in that world. It's very difficult. It's highly competitive. It takes an enormous amount of time and energy. There is nothing normal or regular or safe about it. I love it, but, for a lot of people, they want something that they can count on that's, going to give them a lot of stability. I would say that this is not that career.
I think you're probably right there.
But I would say my advice would be, if you really want to do it, create your own material.
100%.
So if you're a singer or a musician, write your own material. If you're an actor or an actress, try to create your own material. If you're a comedian, you obviously mostly do. So I would say come from what you know.
Definitely. Before I ask the last question, are you taking your hand to any more writing soon?
I am attempting to remember what happened in my life right now. So I have been using COVID to work with one of my kids in going through all the memorabilia I've got and finding all these old videos and tapes and interviews and things. And I'm going to attempt to do some form of autobiography. So I think that's wonderful. What will be next.
Wonderful. Yeah. That's a very, very good use of time, and always useful to have a kid helping you out.
You know what? It's so wonderful because they had no idea. They didn't know who I was. I mean, Chris, who's been working with me, he said, Mom, your IMDb. He told me the other day that just to buy the movies that I don't have in the house that I've been in was going to cost a huge amount of money. He said, do you want to spend that money on all those movies?
Jane, the final question that I ask everybody is, what does the word headstrong mean to you?
I think it means just, daring to try something, following your ideas and daring to make it happen.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for all your time, Jane. It's been so lovely to speak to you and see you again.
Okay.
I hope you have a lovely time out on the West Coast, and I hope it stays warm. I say through gritted teeth.
It is spectacular. It was 85 degrees 2 days ago. I couldn't open my car door. It was so hot. I thought, that's insane. That's crazy. It's November, and I needed gloves and an ice pack afterwards because it's just my fingers were burning on the chrome. Like, really?
Oh, I do pity you. Oh, Jane, thank you so much. It's been lovely to talk to you.
You're welcome.
And that is it for this episode of Headstrong. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to my lovely friend Jane Seymour for coming on to Headstrong. It was so lovely to get to see her and chat while she was all the way in America and I was over here in the UK. It was so lovely to get to see her on Zoom and have a nice catch up and ask her some questions that I forgot to ask her whilst filming Glow in Darkness. Of course, thank you so much to you, the listener, for tuning in and having a listen to me and Jane have a lovely chat. I've got some brilliant guests lined up for the rest of this series 4. I hope you stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on, and please do rate it and leave a review if you do have the chance. But for now, that's it from me this week. I hope to see you again next week.